Daman had everything a man could dream of. His empire stretched across the globe. His private jets touched the skies, and his grand mansions stood as symbols of his unmatched success. Yet, despite all his wealth and power, there was an emptiness inside him that no amount of money could fill. His life, so full from the outside, was hollow where it mattered most. 10 years ago, Damon's perfect world came crashing down. It was a warm, sunlit day, a family trip to the countryside. The air was crisp, the river sparkled under the sunlight, and the laughter of his 8-year-old daughter, Lily, filled the air. She was his everything. But in a single, devastating moment, she disappeared. 1 second she was playing by the riverbank, her laughter ringing out like music. The next, she was gone without a trace. From that day, Damon's life became an unending search. He hired the best private investigators, organized search parties, and spent sleepless nights hoping for a miracle. But as the weeks turned into months and the months into years, no clues emerged. The questions gnawed at his soul. What had happened to Lily? Was she safe? Could he have done more? These thoughts became his constant companions, a shadow that never left him. Now, a decade later, Damon's life still looked perfect from the outside. He lived in the same grand mansion. His business empire continued to flourish, and the world still admired him. But inside, he was a broken man, living in silence, haunted by memories of the daughter he had lost and the family he could never heal. One evening, unable to bear the weight of his loneliness, Daman decided to escape the suffocating walls of his mansion. He got into his car and drove aimlessly through the city streets, unsure of where he was going, just needing to be anywhere but home. After some time, he found himself in front of a small, modest restaurant, a place he had passed countless times but never entered. Tonight, something about its simplicity drew him in. As Daman stepped inside, the restaurant welcomed him with a cozy warmth. The soft yellow lights, the smell of freshly baked bread, and the gentle hum of quiet conversations created an atmosphere far removed from his usual world of extravagance. It was simple, it was real, and for once, it was exactly what he needed. He found a table by the window and sat down, gazing out at the bustling street beyond. The clinking of dishes and murmur of voices surrounded him, but his thoughts were elsewhere. His mind drifted, as it always did, to Lily. What would she look like now? Where was she? Was she even alive? The ache in his heart grew heavier with every passing moment. That's when he saw her, a young waitress weaving through the tables with quiet grace. She had auburn hair tied neatly back and a polite, albeit tired, smile. But it wasn't her smile that caught his attention. It was the small crescent-shaped scar on her forearm. Damon's heart stopped. The scar was identical to the one Lily had, something he could never forget. A scar from a childhood bicycle accident that had left its mark on her arm and on his heart. Could it be her? Was this waitress his lost daughter? Or was his mind playing cruel tricks, clinging to a false hope? Damon's chest tightened as he struggled to breathe. The waitress stopped at his table, her voice calm and polite. "Good evening, sir. May I take your order?" Daman looked up at her, his hands trembling. His voice caught in his throat as memories and emotions collided in his mind. Could this ordinary night in an ordinary place hold the answer to the question that had consumed him for a decade? Daman sat at the small, cozy table, but his mind was far from the warmth of the restaurant. His thoughts were consumed by the young waitress who had just walked away. His heart raced in his chest as his eyes followed her every move. There was something unmistakably familiar about her. The way she carried herself, the tilt of her head when she spoke, and the way her polite smile seemed to mask something deeper. But it was the scar on her arm, faint yet distinct, that had stirred the storm inside him. He couldn't shake the memory of that scar. It wasn't just a mark. It was a part of his daughter's story, a scar she'd earned when she fell off her bike all those years ago. He had kissed that wound to make her feel better, promising her that she'd be fine. Now, here it was again, on the arm of a young waitress in a small restaurant, a decade later. Could this really be her? Could Lily be alive, right here in front of him, after all these years of searching? Damon's emotions were a tangled mess of hope and fear. A part of him wanted to rush over to her, to demand answers, to ask if she remembered anything about her past. But what if he was wrong? What if this young woman wasn't Lily, and he was only setting himself up for heartbreak yet again? He had faced so many dead ends, so many dashed hopes, that the thought of another failure terrified him. He took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. He had to know. He couldn't leave this restaurant without answers. Summoning every ounce of courage, he waited for her to return. When she finally approached his table, her notepad in hand, he felt his throat tighten. She stopped and smiled politely. "Good evening, sir. Is there anything else I can get for you?" Her voice was calm and professional, but to Daman, it was like a fragment of a long-forgotten song. He hesitated for a moment, then finally spoke. "Excuse me, may I ask your name?" His voice trembled slightly as he fought to keep his emotions in check. The waitress tilted her head slightly, puzzled by the question, but answered politely. "It's Lily," she said, her voice soft and unassuming. Daman felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. Her name was Lily. Couldn't be a coincidence. The world around him seemed to blur, and all he could hear was the echo of her name in his mind. He stared at her, his emotions swirling. He needed to know more, but he didn't want to overwhelm her. "That's a beautiful name," he managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. "Do you know much about your past? Your family?" Lily's smile faded slightly, and her expression grew uncertain. "Not really," she admitted. "I grew up in foster care. They told me I was found near a river when I was little, but I don't remember much before that." Her words hit Daman like a thunderclap. The river. The same river where Lily had disappeared all those years ago. His mind raced with possibilities. Could this really be her? Was fate finally leading him back to his daughter? He couldn't keep his hands from trembling as he reached into his wallet. There, tucked away in a worn corner, was a photograph he had carried with him for 10 long years. It was a picture of Lily, taken just days before she disappeared. Her golden curls framed her face. Her smile was as bright as the sun, and her little arm bore the same crescent-shaped scar. With shaking fingers, he placed the photograph on the table. "This is you," he said softly, his voice breaking. "You're my daughter. You disappeared 10 years ago, and I've been searching for you ever since." Lily froze, her eyes wide as she stared at the photograph. Her hands trembled as she reached out to pick it up. The picture seemed to pull her into a memory she hadn't realized she still had. I don't understand," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Daman leaned forward, his voice filled with a mixture of hope and desperation. "Look at your arm," he said gently. "The scar is the same. You got it when you fell off your bike when you were 6 years old. I was there. I carried you home and kissed it better. That scar, it's you. You're my Lily." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes as she stared at the photograph and then at her arm. Her breathing grew unsteady, and her voice cracked as she spoke. I remember falling," she said, her words shaky. "There was water. I was calling for someone, but no one came." Damon's voice broke as he replied, "I was there. I called for you. I searched everywhere. I never stopped." Tears streamed down her face as she looked at him, her voice trembling with emotion. "You're my dad?" she asked, her words almost a whisper. "Yes," Daman said, nodding as his own tears began to flow. "I'm your dad. I've missed you so much. I thought I lost you forever." Lily stepped closer, and they embraced, their tears mingling as years of pain and longing melted away. In that moment, the world around them disappeared, and all that mattered was the reunion they had both longed for. For the first time in a decade, Daman felt whole again. But as they held each other tightly, a nagging thought crept into Damon's mind. How had Lily ended up here? What had happened to her during those lost years? And most troubling of all, was their reunion truly the end of their nightmare, Or was it only the beginning of something much darker? The answers to those questions would not only change their lives but also reveal truths they might not be ready to face. The moment was everything Daman had dreamed of. As he held Lily in his arms, the years of pain, regret, and searching melted away. Tears streamed down their faces as they clung to each other, their hearts overwhelmed by the joy of finally being reunited. "I thought I'd lost you forever," Daman whispered, his voice cracking with emotion. Lily pulled back just enough to look at him, her eyes shimmering with tears. "I never thought I'd have a family again. I didn't even know if I had one," she said softly. "But now, I have you." They promised each other that they would never be separated again. Damon's heart swelled with hope, something he hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a decade, his life felt complete. But just as joy began to settle in, a shadow of unease crept over him. As they drove back to Damon's mansion, the streets outside were quiet, but inside the car, a new silence filled the air. Lily sat next to him, still clutching the old photograph he had shown her. Her fingers traced the edges as if trying to make sense of everything. "I still can't remember much," she admitted, her voice hesitant. "It's like bits and pieces of a dream. I remember water, trees, and then nothing." Daman glanced at her, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. "We'll figure it out," he said firmly. "Whatever happened, whoever did this, I'll make sure we uncover the truth." But as they pulled into the driveway of his sprawling mansion, something caught his eye. Sitting on the passenger seat was a small, nondescript package wrapped in plain brown paper. He hadn't noticed it before, and there was no return address. "What's this?" Lily asked, her voice tinged with unease. Daman picked it up carefully, his instincts on high alert. He tore open the paper to reveal a single envelope inside. The note it contained was short, but its message sent a chill down his spine. "You found her, but you don't know the whole story. Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Damon's hands trembled as he read the note. He glanced at Lily, whose face had gone pale. "What does it mean?" she whispered. "It means someone doesn't want us to know the truth," Daman replied, his voice dark with determination. "This wasn't an accident, Lily. Someone took you. Someone tried to keep us apart. And now they're trying to scare us into staying quiet." Lily looked at him, her fear giving way to a spark of resolve. "We can't stop now. I need to know what happened. I need to know why." Daman nodded, his jaw tightening. "We'll find out. Together." As they walked into the house, the weight of the note lingered heavily over them. The joy of their reunion was now mixed with the ominous realization that their journey was far from over. Someone was watching them. Someone had taken Lily all those years ago and still didn't want the truth to come to light. The night stretched on as Daman and Lily sat together, piecing together fragments of her memories and his recollections. Every detail, no matter how small, felt like a piece of a much larger puzzle. The questions were endless. Why was Lily taken? Who was behind it? And why, after all these years, had they left this note now? As the clock ticked past midnight, Daman looked at his daughter, a mixture of love and determination in his eyes. "Whatever it takes, we'll find the truth," he said. Lily nodded, her expression mirroring his resolve. "I've spent my whole life not knowing who I was," she said softly. "But now that I've found you, I won't let anyone take that away again." Together, they stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The reunion that had brought them joy had also opened a door to a dark and dangerous mystery. Their search for answers would lead them down a path filled with secrets, betrayal, and revelations that would change everything they thought they knew. As they drove into the night, the headlights of Damon's car cutting through the darkness, one thing was certain. This was only the beginning. The truth was out there, and they would uncover it no matter the cost. If you enjoyed this heartfelt story, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more amazing tales. Your support keeps us going.